We leave the Gospel of Mark for 5 weeks and we enter into the mystery of the Gospel of John, specifically John chapter 6, which is the bread of life discourse. In the Gospel of John, there are 7 I am statements. And this is the first one, I am the bread of life, which we'll touch upon, I think, next week. So I'll deal with that a little bit over the next couple of weeks. Right in front of us is the miracle of the loaves and the fishes. Jesus has climbed the mountain and he sees the crowd. They've been following him because they've been impressed by his signs, the gospel says, particularly the curing of the sick. He sees the crowd and he said, look, how are we going to feed all these people? There's a massive crowd here. And it says he asked Philip this question only to test Philip because he knew exactly himself what he was going to do. That's the Gospel of John for us. Philip says, well, look, I've got 200 denarii, but that'll only buy them a little bit each. And Andrew pipes up and he says, well, there's a little boy over here who's got 5 barley loaves and some fish, probably buying something at the market for lunch or dinner with his mother's money. And he said, well, what will that do? To which Jesus says, well, sit down, get the crowd to sit down and we'll feed them. And that question that Andrew says, we've just got this little boy here with these few loaves of bread and some fishes, what will that be among so many? And all the gospel commentators say what a significant question that is. It brings us into this profound reality right down throughout the ages, in our own time too, that God was able to use the basic elements of life and take them to himself in such a fashion that he transforms them for our benefit. In this case, he transforms those few loaves, that little bit of fish to feed the 5,000. It becomes symbolic of the great Eucharist that we celebrate. In all the Gospels, they say that Jesus took the bread, he blessed it, he broke it, gave it. It's exactly what he does at the Last Supper. So they see the miracle of the loaves and the fishes as a foretaste, as a sign, as a symbol, a forerunner of the great Eucharist that Jesus feeds us with. So that's it. He takes some bread, takes some fish, feeds the crowd. He takes some bread, he takes some wine, transforms it into his body and blood. What he does, I think that's an important point that's being made, is that he takes these things, Jesus takes these things to himself in such a fashion that they become him. God can do that sort of thing. And then he feeds the crowd. And so that's the first transformation. The next, of course, is that as we receive those transformed elements that no longer bread and no longer wine, but are his very body and blood, we, the scattered humanity that we are, become his body, the body of Christ. As Augustine says famously, we become what we receive. I think also famously Augustine said, well, who would not adore first what he's about to receive? That's a great way of looking at the Mass. So we have these 5 wonderful weeks which will bring us into the mystery of the Eucharist. I am the bread of life. This is the first instalment this week. It leads us to a profoundly important spiritual point, that God is able to take what is very small, what is very elemental, and transform it into something far greater, in this case himself, to feed us, give us nourishment, and then so far give us life to the full.